Good afternoon from St. Louis. I'm Russell Hawes, Vice Chairman of the Metropolitan St. Louis Sewer District Rate Commission, and I will be presiding over this public hearing. With me this afternoon are the following MSD Rate Commission members: Mr. Paul Brockman, Mr. Mark Shadle, Mr. Lloyd Palins, Mr. Paul Ziegler, and Mr. Jack Stein. This is a unique meeting for the Rate Commission and the first time that we've facilitated a streaming meeting and the opportunity to post questions on the Rate Commission's social media channels. Andy Likes is our moderator today, and he'll be taking your questions on Facebook and Twitter. For Facebook, that's at MSD Rate Commission, and for Twitter, that's at Rate Commission. And email msdrateCommission@gmail.com. Now, the charter plan of the district was amended at a general election on November 7th, 2000, and established the Rate Commission to review and make recommendations to the district regarding changes in wastewater rates, stormwater rates, and tax rates proposed by the district. The charter plan requires the MSD Board of Trustees to select organizations to ensure a fair representation of all users of the district services on the Rate Commission. The Rate Commission representative organizations are to represent commercial industrial users, residential users, and organizations interested in the operation of the district, including organizations focused on environmental issues, labor issues, social economic issues, community neighborhood organizations, and other nonprofit organizations. The MSD Rate Commission currently consists of 15 members from these organizations and institutions throughout St. Louis City and County. On February 26, 2018, the Rate Commission received a rate change notice proposing changes to the district's stormwater rates. The Rate Commission adopted operational rates and a procedural schedule to govern the proceedings on March 4th, 2018. Under the current procedural schedule adopted by the Rate Commission, the MSD Rate Commission has until June 26, 2018 to review and make a recommendation to the MSD Board of Trustees as to whether the proposed rate should be approved, not approved, or modified, with suggested changes and then approved. The Commission requested an extension from the MSD Board of Trustees until August 10, 2018, which was granted on May 1, 2018. The Commission on May 17, 2018, adopted a new revised procedural schedule, including the extension. The MSD Rate Commission has engaged legal counsel and a rate consultant independent of those used by MSD staff. Under procedural rules adopted by the Rate Commission as amended, any person affected by the rate change proposal had an opportunity to submit an application to intervene in these proceedings. An application to intervene has been filed by Missouri Industrial Energy Consumers. This application has been granted. Since February 26, 2018, the MSD Rate Commission has received testimony from MSD staff, the rate consultant, and the interveners. The parties have also engaged in discovery requests. A pre-hearing conference for the purpose of identifying any issues raised by the rate-setting documents and the prepared testimony previously submitted will be conducted on the record. All persons submitting testimony may participate in the pre-hearing conference, and each participant in the pre-hearing conference shall submit a pre-hearing conference report describing the issues raised by the rate-setting documents and the prepared testimony, together with a brief description of such participants' position, if any, on each issue and rationale therefore. Ratepayers who do not wish to intervene are permitted to participate in these on-the-record public hearings, conducted in 7 sessions, which started on May 8, 2018. After today's session, there are 2 hearings remaining. The Rate Commission published a public notice regarding these proceedings in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch and the St. Louis American. These notices contained the time, dates, and location of each of the conferences and hearings. The public hearing session this afternoon is for the purpose of permitting the district to present its stormwater rate change proposal and to permit any taxpayer an opportunity to comment. We will begin with a presentation by the district, followed by a public comment period. Different from our traditional public hearings, today our public comment period will include our social media accounts and email, where people will be able to ask questions online during the proceedings. We will have a facilitator asking those questions, that's Andy Likes, to the rate commissioners following the presentation by the district. The district will be presenting a lot of information, so you may want to hold your questions to the end of the presentation. Those wishing to be heard should include their name with their question on Facebook, Twitter, or email, and your questions will be asked in the order that they were received. Each ratepayer should identify any organization represented by such ratepayer. Now, is the district ready to proceed?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we are.
All right. Then I will send it to the district.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Brian Holscher. I'm the Executive Director and CEO here at MSD. I'm going to give an overview of the Stormwater Capital Funding proposal that MSD staff has delivered to the Rate Commission for review. Presentation consists of 3 parts. First, I will briefly do an overview of MSD and its current services. Second, I will concentrate on just what the existing stormwater services are that MSD provides and where those revenues come from. And finally, I'll go into a lot of detail about the proposed stormwater rate proposal that is currently in front of the Rate Commission for consideration. There will be, as the chairman said, we will receive questions and answer questions as we receive them. If there are questions that we don't get to or things that don't have, the topic is not regarding this rate proposal, MSD staff will make sure we get back to you with any other questions you have. Overview of MSD. We are a government utility. We are created by a provision in the state constitution. We have a voter-approved charter. Our board of trustees consists of 6 individuals, 3 who are appointed by the county executive of St. Louis County, and 3 who are appointed by the mayor of the city of St. Louis. It's important to remember that we're 2 utilities in one. We are a wastewater utility that collects and treats wastewater, and there's a separate dedicated source of revenue for that. We're also a stormwater utility, provide stormwater management services. The revenues collected for these 2 separate endeavors cannot be used for the other. They're dedicated revenues for those specific services. We have a 520 square mile service area that is all of the city of St. Louis and about 87% of St. Louis County. 1.3 million customers, and we service 88 different municipalities within our service boundaries. We have 7 treatment plants. Those treatment plants treat approximately 350 million gallons per day. And if you add up all the sewers we have, MSD has almost 10,000 miles of sewers that it operates and maintains. That makes MSD the 4th largest sewer system in miles of sewers throughout the country. Most recent time that we came to the voters was in April 2016 with something called Proposition S. The issue that was addressed by the Proposition S vote was funds in order for us to operate and maintain the public storm sewer system located throughout our district. Prior to Proposition S, any kind of public storm sewer system, inlets, manholes, or concrete sewers that were located west of I-270, MSD owned, but had no revenues to operate and maintain those. With the passage of Proposition S, we're now able to operate and maintain the public storm sewer system throughout our entire district, with everybody paying a fair share of their cost. So where we stand right now with our current stormwater services, if you take a look at the chart I've got, the upper left-hand corner, there's currently 2 taxes that MSD collects and 2 sets of services. First of all, we collect a 0.0188 cent per $100 valuation property tax from all of our customers. That shows up on your annual property tax bill. That 2-cent property tax pays for all of our regulatory issues with regard to stormwater. That has to do with the impact that pollutants that are in stormwater runoff, the impact that has on our local creeks and streams. That tax has been in place, specifically identified since 1979. It's prior to the Hancock Amendment, and currently the revenues we collect from that 2-cent tax are sufficient for the services we need to provide. Second is what is this year will be a 9.71 cent per $100 valuation property tax. That is the Proposition S funds that I spoke about previously. That takes care of two of the three major services that MSD can provide. The other one is flooding and erosion. When Proposition S passed, MSD was able to turn off two other sources of stormwater revenue and eliminate them, as well as set at zero taxes in 21 different separate subdistricts. That left a fund balance in those 23 different funds of $67 million. MSD committed as part of Proposition S to address stormwater, flooding, and erosion problems throughout the district with that $67 million balance. The map you see on the presentation is the same map that we used as part of Proposition S. It's currently on MSD's website. If you were to look at the map on our website, each one of those dots has a number. Each number relates to a spreadsheet that describes a project, what's being resolved, how we're going to fix the problem, how much it costs, and when it's going to get done. MSD's got about 30% of these projects done, and it's on its way to designing and constructing the balance. The issue MSD wants to address is once this $67 million pot of money is gone for flooding and erosion issues, there is no more money. There are no revenues currently coming into a fund in order to address flooding and erosion issues. MSD's rate proposal is to provide a district-wide funding source for us to be able to address flooding and erosion issues district-wide. This is an example of some of the problems we're talking about. There's localized flooding. Water that gets in people's backyards or because of lack of storm sewers or blocked swales. Water sits in people's yards for an inordinate amount of time, causing flooding locally. Second one is regional flooding, not necessarily the Merrimack River, but other rivers such as Kiefer Creek or Fishpot Creek or River de Pere. Folks are living in floodplains, and when we have extreme rain events, they get impacted by that flooding. And finally, there's erosion. This is any kind of creek erosion that can threaten roads, garages, homes, yards. We're looking for a revenue source in order to address these three different types of issues. How big is the problem? MSD collects a list of stormwater issues as part of its regulatory responsibilities. Based on that, we currently have identified about 500 unfunded erosion and flooding issues throughout our district boundaries. They total about $562 million. They range anywhere from an erosion that's ready to force a garage to fall into a creek, all the way down to stormwater after a rain that sits in somebody's backyard too long, and those folks would like that fixed. It's a whole range of problems. What do we want to do to address that issue? We want to implement a capital rate to fund $30 million a year of stormwater capital improvements to address flooding and erosion. Stormwater capital rate will be based on the amount of impervious area on each customer's property. Impervious areas are areas where when rainfall falls, it doesn't soak into the ground, it runs off. This would be rooftops, concrete driveways, concrete sidewalks. The average charge for a single-family home under our proposal is $2.25 per month, or about $27 per year. All tax-exempt entities and not-for-profits, they will all be billed this tax. So this charge. We're talking about hospitals and schools, churches, airports. They will all be measured for impervious area, and all will be proposed that they all pay this charge. Again, the fund will address unfunded stormwater issues. Estimates are that this current rate of funding, we can get the program done in 25 to 30 years and address all the problems that are currently existing. Creeks and streams, as they have in the past, will remain under private ownership. MSD doesn't own these creeks and streams, nor are we a floodplain manager. The management of the developments in floodplains are controlled by the local municipalities, and that authority will remain with the local municipalities. Quick description again of impervious area. Again, it's any surface such as concrete, blacktop, rooftops, or in some cases compacted gravel that don't absorb stormwater the way a natural foliated ground would, and which generates additional stormwater runoff. The flooding and erosion services being provided are directly impacted by the volume of stormwater runoff created by impervious area on each property. The fairest way to determine the revenue contribution of each property to solve this problem is by measuring the amount of impervious area on everybody's property. This methodology is commonly used throughout the United States. And again, as I mentioned, we're talking about charging all users or generators of stormwater, be they profit, not-for-profit, and municipalities. You may recall MSD attempted to put an impervious rate in place about 10 years ago. It was found by the Missouri Supreme Court that because it was not a voted on rate, it was unconstitutional. What came out of that meeting and what came out of that proposal was that, though, if we were going to move forward with addressing flooding and erosion, we needed to do it on an impervious area-based method. That is what we're proposing here, a voted on impervious area to be fair to all the ratepayers and also to be in compliance with state statutes. How are we going to do the calculation? It's going to be based on equivalent residential units, or ERUs. That's the measure of the average number of square feet of impervious area that's found on a residential customer's properties. The current ERU, or the average amount of impervious area on a residential property in MSD service area, is 2,600 square feet. The proposed rate was determined by taking the recommended capital improvement program, which is about $30 million annually, and dividing it up by the number of ERUs that are throughout our district. That's where we come up with the average cost for a residential customer be $2.25 per month, or $27 annually. To get in a little more detail, single-family residential customers will be calculated and put in 4 different tiers, depending on the amount of impervious area that's on their property. The tier ranges were developed using the equivalent residential unit as a reference point. This is a commonly accepted practice to cost-effectively bill residential customers throughout the country. So let's go through the tiers. First of all, Tier 1. If you are a residential customer who has between 200 and 2,000 square feet of impervious area on your property, the charge that MSD is proposing is $1.42 per month. That represents about 1/4 of our residential customers. If you fall in Tier 2, that's between 2,001 and 3,600 square feet of impervious area, we're proposing a rate of $2.25 per month for those residential customers. That represents about half of our customers. You'll notice 2,600 square feet, or 1 ERU, fits kind of right in the middle of that range. Again, that is the typical charge we'll see from most residential customers. If you have a property with slightly more impervious area, we'll fall in Tier 3. Anywhere between 3,601 and 6,000 square feet of impervious area, we'll be looking to charge $3.74 per month. And if you have a much larger home with more impervious area, anything over 6,000 square feet, we're proposing to charge $6.84 per month. That's for residential customers. We have 50,000 other customers, multifamily, residential, industrial, commercial, who we need to bill. We're going to do that based on the amount of ERUs. Remember, 1 ERU is 2,600 square feet. So take an example of a commercial entity that has 10,000 square feet of impervious area. If you take 10,000 square feet of impervious area, divide it by 2,600, you come up with 3.85 ERUs. MSD will round that up to 4 ERUs times $2.25 per month per ERU, and that particular commercial property, we would be looking to charge $9 per month for the stormwater services. The first full year of collection would be our fiscal 2022, which is from July 1, 2021 through June 2022. If this proposal moves forward, the first billing would actually occur in January 1, 2021. July 1, 2000. Start over. January 1, 2000. Total revenues we're collecting from a single-family residential unit will collect about $13.8 million in revenue. That's slightly half of the total program cost. And from the non-residential customers, $16.2 million, or slightly more than 50% of the overall program of $30 million. How will we bill? For most customers, that's 450,000 of them, the stormwater capital rate will appear on the current monthly bill that folks receive for wastewater. There'll simply be an additional line on the monthly bill from MSD. We do have customers, about 50,000 of them, who don't currently receive wastewater service from MSD. They'll fall into two categories. If we have non-residential customers who have at least 20 ERUs of impervious area, MSD will be billing them on a monthly basis. They will be getting a separate bill. Since they don't receive the wastewater bill, it'll be the only monthly bill they receive from MSD. All other customers, primarily residential, we're going to be billing on a quarterly basis. Why do we do that? Most residential customers are going to be looking to charge $2.25 per month. It is not cost effective for MSD to send out a monthly bill of $2.25 and look to receive those revenues. So we'll be billing folks every 3 months. There will be some incentive programs that we're proposing within the rate that we're sending to the Rate Commission. One, there will be pervious credits. The easiest way to lower your monthly bill will be to reduce your impervious area. If you're a residential customer, it would be reducing the amount of impervious area so that you drop into a lower tier. If you are a non-residential customer, simply eliminating 1 ERU or 2,600 square feet. For every ERU you eliminate of impervious area, MSD will reduce the bill by $2.25 per month. Those properties that live next to the large rivers, the Mississippi River, the Merrimack River, the Missouri River, we will be looking to provide a 70% credit. Their runoff goes directly to the large creeks and streams that MSD has no responsibility for, but there are still impervious areas such as roadways that need to be paid for, and 30% would be their share of the overall bill. We will provide an incentive for best management practices, and that incentive will be a 50% credit. The 50% credit will be if a residential customer can take 500 square feet of their impervious area and run it to a treatment unit, such as a rain garden or some other kind of facility. MSD will then make an upfront payment of $135 to help assist with the cost of making that installation. That results in a 50% credit of the bill over the next 10 years. Finally, low impact development, we will offer a credit of 35% for those who meet the low impact development criteria. It implies if the impervious area is less than 15% of a residential property and the residential property is more than 3 acres. This will allow it to mirror the environmentally sensitive development design standards that exist throughout the country, and the credit of 35% will reflect the reduction in actual stormwater runoff from those properties. How we plan on proceeding. MSD staff, as previously said, we submitted our proposal to the Rate Commission on February 26, 2018. The Rate Commission has 165 days to review the proposal and make a recommendation to MSD's Board of Trustees by August 10th. We are holding technical meetings. This is one of many. They will extend into June. Under the current schedule, again, the Rate Commission is supposed to deliver to our Board of Trustees their final recommendations by August 10th. If it is what their recommendation will be considered by our Board of Trustees in the last part of calendar 2018, assuming that we move forward, the earliest chance for a public vote would be in April 2019. Prior to that vote in April 2019, MSD will again have another public information session. We won't be advocating for one way or the other, but we will provide information to voters to let them know what will be on the April 2019 ballot. There's 2 possible results from this. The voters will vote yes. If they do vote yes, MSD will start collecting the impervious rate, and MSD will start providing that service. If the voters vote no, and MSD is not collecting the revenue for this service, MSD will not provide that service. Again, if the vote is yes, we will start collecting the new rate in January 2020. I do want to touch base on another rate proposal that will be coming in the future. That's stormwater that I've talked about before. Now, we are coming up where MSD is going to have to go to its Rate Commission for wastewater rates in 2021 through 2024. Right now, MSD staff is proposing to get a rate proposal in front of the Rate Commission for the next set of wastewater rates in February 2019. Once we do that, we will use the same process that I've described here for stormwater. The Rate Commission will consider our proposal, and again, we'll have a new set of public participation meetings to gather input from the public. Mr. Chairman, that's the end of my presentation.
Well, thank you, Mr. Holscher. We appreciate that very much. Andy, do we have any questions from the public?
We do. We've gotten several already. The first one is actually about the rate commission itself. How is the rate commission decided?
Does anyone want to take a stab at that? They're appointed? Yeah, maybe Mr. Holscher could.
Mr. Chair, I've been through this a couple times, so let me get what's there. MSD's charter was changed in 2000 to develop this rate commission to review any kind of rate proposals by MSD. The rate commission consists of 15 different organizations. The Board of Trustees accept applications from these organizations who would like to serve on the rate commission. MSD tries to make sure that the rate commission consists of a group of organizations that represent our ratepayers as a whole. For instance, there are socioeconomic groups, neighborhood groups, government groups, labor groups, contracting groups, business groups. They try and make sure they cover all those areas. MSD's Board of Trustees appoint those 15 different organizations, and then their organizations appoint the individual trustees, the individual members of the rate commission. Rate commissioners, once they're appointed, they serve a 6-year term.
Very well explained. Thank you, Mr. Holscher. Andy, any more
Absolutely,
questions?
sir. And by the way, I just want to remind everyone, if you have questions, please submit them on Facebook and Twitter or by email, and we'll get to as many of them as we can during the session today. The next question comes from Heather in Wildwood. She says, thank you very much for the presentation. If the monthly fee for stormwater is passed, how long will the increase last, and what's the duration, 2022 to when?
MSD's proposal to the rate commission is that the fee would last in perpetuity unless a decision was made to shut it off. So right now, as I mentioned before, we're talking about collecting $30 million a year. That will result in us taking 25 to 30 years to address all of the stormwater issues we know of now. Once we get to that point, obviously, if it turns out that we've eliminated or taken care of most of the stormwater issues, there'll be another decision made as to whether or not we need to continue the program or whether or not we need to terminate the program.
Next question is about the credits you discussed a second ago, sir. Can rain barrels help qualify for a credit?
Mr. Chairman, I'll take that one. Rain barrels can, but understand the standard that I've laid out. The way you can get a credit for a rain barrel or a set of cisterns that hold water, you're going to have to find something that has enough volume to collect the runoff of a 500 square feet of impervious area and hold that for a 1 to 2 year storm. Those are the current standards. A single rain barrel will not do that. However, you can chain them together or have some other kind of cistern where if you hold enough water back, you would be eligible for the credit.
Follow-up question basically to that. What are some ways or examples to reduce impervious surfaces on our properties so we can qualify for that reduction?
So I'll give the typical example on how to do a reduction. And this is what we saw when we passed the original impervious rate back in 2007. The most common thing we see is homeowners, what they will do is they will take their back concrete patios or sidewalks, and because they need replacement, because they need work done, they will remove them and replace them with something that is pervious, such as pervious pavers or just some kind of stone. That will eliminate the impervious area. We have had some individuals and some businesses who have actually put green roofs on their property so that they actually have greenery on top of the roof. It captures the stormwater, and that we will count as pervious area and not impervious, and that would also reduce somebody's impervious area.
Mr. Chairman, the next question comes from an MSD ratepayer. How do you prioritize all of these projects?
Mr. Holscher?
Sure. We will plan on prioritizing the projects the same way we currently do with the stormwater funds we had, as I explained earlier, in the $67 million worth of programs. We have a system set up where we evaluate the value of various problems. For instance, if somebody has erosion, and I'll use that as the easiest example, in their backyard that's approaching their fence, that will have one benefit value. If the erosion in somebody's backyard has come up to their back patio in their home, there's a higher benefit value. So we'll take all of the possible problems and all the potential solutions, and we'll take those benefit points divided by cost, and we'll end up with a benefit cost ratio. And the higher priority projects that had the higher ratio will be funded first.
Next question is about flooding. If someone has flooding like we saw in the pictures of the presentation earlier, how do they let MSD know so that they can add it to the problem areas?
Because MSD currently receives stormwater issues from residents and oftentimes from a lot of the municipalities in our area, our database is pretty good, but we know we don't have all the problems. It's impossible for us to go out and look for stormwater problems. If anyone has a stormwater issue and you want to make sure it's on our list, even if you have called before, contact MSD, explain the issue. If we have it in our system and it seems as though the problem's still the same, we'll probably say thank you. If it's something new or something's changed significantly, we'll send an engineer out in the field to evaluate and determine if there's a change in the priority. That is the way MSD finds out the size of the stormwater issues throughout the district, is complaints from customers. So if you have one, please contact MSD.
All right, here's our first question from Twitter this afternoon. How do you justify taxing residential landowners who have their own septic system and don't use MSD services? They will have a follow-up based on your answer.
Okay. If you have a septic system and you are not getting wastewater services from MSD, you are not getting a wastewater bill. Again, that is one service that MSD is providing, is wastewater service. We're talking about a separate utility. This is a stormwater utility. We're trying to address problems having to do with runoff that's causing erosion and flooding issues. Those issues are driven by the runoff that comes off of impervious area from any property, be it residential, commercial, industrial, not-for-profit, that runs into the local drainage system. That is how we're going to be providing that service. And we will not be charging you wastewater charges. If you have a septic tank, you will not get a bill from MSD. However, you will be billed if we proceed with the program for stormwater.
Mr. Chairman, the next question, why didn't you combine the rate commissions for both stormwater and wastewater?
That's, again, probably the best.
Mr. Chairman, I'll pass on, I think, the experiences that I think, especially those who've been on the rate commission before. Last time when we did this, we tried combining both stormwater and wastewater. We were able to get through it, it worked, but it resulted in a very long process. This, as opposed to the other stormwater rate, is a brand new service that MSD is offering. It was staff's decision to present to the rate commission the stormwater rate proposal separate of the wastewater rate proposal. We think it's the right thing to do. Again, it is a service that we don't currently provide, and we thought the extra attention was necessary in order for the rate commission to be able to properly deliberate on our proposal.
Mr. Chairman, next question is about your bill. Will there be a separate bill?
It depends. If you currently get a wastewater bill, this charge will simply be added to that current bill. You'll see a stormwater charge on your monthly bill from MSD. If you don't currently receive a wastewater bill, there was a portion in the presentation, if you take a look, if you have a lot of impervious area, at least 20 ERUs, or that's 20 times 2,600, which is an awful lot of impervious area, we will bill you on a monthly basis. If you don't currently receive a wastewater bill from MSD, we plan for almost all residential customers, we plan on billing quarterly.
All right, next question. Will everyone pay the same amount? I believe you answered that during your presentation, but you might want to just follow up on that.
So I'm going to do that here. I'm going to back up to the, guys help me when I'm at the tiered. I can't necessarily see this.
Keep going.
One more? Whoops. No, it wasn't there.
There it is.
That's it, okay. Sorry, folks, I've had a recent issue with my one eye, so it's a little hard to see it from a distance. Repeat the question for me, if you would.
Will everyone pay the same amount?
Okay, everybody will not pay the same amount. Again, the amount that you pay will be based on the amount of impervious area. For residential customers, I currently have the slide that was up on the screen. Depending on which tier your residential property falls into, how much impervious area you have on your property, you will be billed anywhere from $1.42 per month to $6.84 per month. Non-residential customers, this would be industrial, commercial, municipalities, they will be billed based on the number of ERUs, or blocks of 2,600 square feet of impervious area they have. Their bill will be based on $2.25 per month per ERU.
Mr. Chairman, the next question also comes from Twitter. What if all the runoff we have on our property goes into a retention pond and we can prove it? Will they still be charged?
Mr. Holt?
So there are, in any rate proposal, circumstances that are very unusual. In the way the proposal was put out, that's a particular instance where we would assume somebody exists in the same fashion as somebody whose runoff goes to a major river, the Mississippi River, the Missouri River, the Merrimack River. There would be a 70% credit offered. Again, the balance of the 30% is to address the runoff that's coming from public infrastructure that does not get billed, such as roads and streets. So if you are in that situation and MSD reviews your bill, you can, as described, you can get a 70% credit, and that credit would also be retroactive since the start of the program.
Next question. Will people who live in floodplains be included in this?
Yes, they will.
Well, that was quick. That's what I have right now. We'll keep looking for more questions. If you have questions, please submit them on Facebook and Twitter. And with that, I'll send it back to the chairman to see if the Rate Commission has any questions.
Any rate commissioners have any questions at this point for Mr. Holscher?
Yes, Mr. Holscher, you mentioned the credits, so it sounded like everybody will pay at least some portion, that they can never get 100% credits and pay nothing at all as part of this rate increase.
Yes, sir, that's correct. Again, the explanation, reason for that, MSD will not be measuring and billing impervious area that also serves as a stormwater conveyance entity. That would be roads, for instance, with the curb and gutter. They actually carry the stormwater. The areas on public right-of-way are not being billed for impervious area. That's the reason the maximum credit that any individual can get is 70%, because we do need to collect from the whole population who are being served by these streets. We need to collect the monies that address the runoff coming off that public infrastructure.
Any further questions from rate commissioners? Mr. Brockman.
Brian, going back to the buyouts for properties in floodplains, what would happen to those properties after you buy them out?
So MSD, in some of the areas where it was previously collecting taxes, has been doing buyouts in floodplains. We plan on using the same strategies we have in the past. One, we will need the municipalities to agree that it's worthwhile to purchase somebody out of a floodplain. And we're talking about, as of today, homes that are in 2- and 5-year floodplains. Once we purchase those properties, we will do them at fair market value using federal guidelines to allow folks to move or whatever they want to do to abandon the property. MSD will take over the property, demo the facilities that are there, and then we will look to turn the property over to somebody else. Usually that's a municipality. On occasion, it's adjacent property owners. However, when MSD turns that property over, we're also including an easement across the entire property that will prevent any kind of future development happening that would increase, again, the impervious area.
Thank you.
Any further questions from rate commissioners? Andy, do we have any further questions from the public?
I do, Mr. Chairman. We've had a couple of more come in.
Good.
The first one is for those the folks who are not typically getting a bill right now, the nonprofits, the folks who are not typically taxed. How soon will they know what they need to pay so that they can budget for that?
Mr. Holscher.
So right now, the plan will be to start the billing in January 2020, assuming a positive vote in April 2019. Based on our experiences in instituting the non-voted for impervious rate about 10 years ago, sometimes that will cause problems with various entities because of the annual budgeting process. We will work with them to make sure that we do the billing in an appropriate way so that they have an opportunity to increase their annual budgets to make sure they can accommodate the new cost.
Mr. Chairman, we had another question about the Rate Commission and the member credentials. It might just be good to say where all of the Rate Commission members are from for their day jobs.
All right, well, I will start. I'm Russ Hawes. I'm the Chief Administrative Officer for the City of Kirkwood, and I represent the St. Louis Municipal League.
I'm Paul Brockman with Missouri Botanical Garden. I represent Missouri Botanical Garden and other not-for-profit cultural institutions.
I am Mark Shadle with Lutheran Senior Services, and I represent the older adults in the Metropolitan Sewer District service area.
Thank you. I'm Lloyd Palins, and I'm with the Bryan Cave Law Firm downtown, and I represent the municipality of the City of Ladue.
My name's Paul Ziegler, and I'm Executive Director at Education Plus and represent the public school districts in the metropolitan area.
I'm Jack Stein. I am retired from Anheuser-Busch. I represent the Missouri Industrial Energy Consumers, which is a consortium of large industrial, electrical, water, and sewer users in the St. Louis metropolitan area.
And Mr. Chairman, you might want to just say that there are many more rate commissioners than are here today.
Absolutely. The Rate Commission is composed of 15 individuals representing different interests throughout the area, as Mr. Holscher identified, a good cross-section of the community and of the ratepayers of the Metropolitan Sewer District.
Okay. Next question is from Twitter. How will my property be evaluated for impervious surfaces? Will MSD be sending representatives into the field to measure, or will it be based on current property surveys?
Mr. Holscher.
Very good question. As we have always done in the past, MSD will be basing impervious area on aerial photography. Aerial photography is done in the area at least every 1 or 2 years and is used by just about every public entity as well as private entities throughout the area. So based on that photography, we can outline the amount of impervious area that's actually within your property boundaries. For instance, most people's driveways extend into the public right-of-way. We will not be counting as impervious area your driveway that's off your property. We'll only be counting the impervious area that's on the driveway. It will be through computer analysis. Most of the data will be calculated automatically, and there will be a hand check to make sure things are correct. There is a chance there may be mistakes. If there are and somebody appeals and we have to go out and do a field verification, if there was a mistake, we'll make sure that we retroactively decrease the amount that we charge for impervious area.
Next question. Do you have an estimate on how many jobs this will provide for the St. Louis area?
So all of this work will be based on contracted work. We won't be MSD employees other than doing design work as well as doing inspection work. MSD's current program, Project Clear, is generating about 250 new jobs at a level of about $300 to $350 million. So based on that, this $30 million per year program would probably result in just about 30 additional jobs, full-time jobs.
Next question, back to Twitter. Is Tier 4, you had the 4 tiers on your PowerPoint slide, is Tier 4 capped at 6,000 square feet regardless of how much more property you have above 6,000? We are not charged more than $6.84 a month.
Correct. So any property that has at least 6,000, residential property that has at least 6,000 square feet of impervious area, it doesn't matter how much more you have than that, you will be billed the rate that is currently shown on the slide that's there. $6.84 per month, I believe.
Great. I just want to, one more chance. We have a couple of more coming in, but I just want to remind everybody, please submit your questions on Facebook and Twitter. You can also email your questions to msdratecommission@gmail.com. And next question just came in. If my backyard floods every time it rains, will that be taken care of? And how do I make sure you know about that flooding in my backyard?
I want to answer this question every time it's asked. If you have a stormwater problem and you have never called us, call us and tell us you have a problem. We'll make sure we can evaluate what the problem is. We'll at least have a preliminary idea of where it would land in the cost-benefit analysis. If you have a stormwater problem, call MSD and tell us. If you have called us in the past and you'd like to make sure we have the information, call us again. Especially if you called us in the past and the situation has changed or gotten worse, please call us and let us know. That'll allow us to keep the database up, and make the database as up to date as we possibly can. Again, the only place we know of stormwater issues are complaints we get from residents in the municipalities. Please call if you have something.
We had a question at the last Rate Commission meeting up in Bridgeton that I'd like to bring up today as well. If a municipality is already doing a stormwater project, or they already have it projected to complete, will MSD be working with them if those projects line up with what you're proposing?
Yeah, I'm going to, and not only that question, but I think I'm going to take the opportunity to answer the much larger question. Directly to that, if a municipality is doing a project, and this is the most common example we see, municipalities do collect stormwater and park taxes. Many of them do their own stormwater projects. Most of them, if they have stormwater plans or other lists, they will coordinate with MSD so that we have all the same database. If a municipality is moving forward and they're doing a project that has a proper priority and is already programmed in MSD's program, MSD will pay for that portion of their project that MSD was planning to spend for construction. That coordination actually goes much further. Oftentimes you can imagine the most common instance we see is we're ready to do a stormwater project and the municipality plans on putting a new road surface in the year before we move. That's the type of coordination we normally see with municipalities, not just stormwater dollars, but other capital improvement dollars. And we try best we can to work with all the municipalities to make sure that either new infrastructure put in by MSD or new infrastructure put in by the municipality is not torn up because we're not coordinating our efforts.
For now, Mr. Chairman, I will send it back to you to see if the Rate Commission has any more questions while we tabulate some other questions that come in on social media.
Thank you, Andy. Any further questions from the rate commissioners for Mr. Holscher at this point? Hearing none. Anything further on?
I have no additional questions right now, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Well, seeing none, I'd like to thank all the participants this afternoon for your participation. Everybody who is out there in TV land, so to speak.
Mr. Chairman, I did get one additional
We've got
question
one.
if
All
you would
right,
like
that's
to
good.
It says, good presentation, good setup for your system of evaluating and taxing properties. I'm still not sure if I will vote for it. Do you have any comment based on that comment?
Very legitimate feeling. MSD, again, is offering a service. There are individuals, based on our surveying, we know quite a bit of the individuals throughout our district find stormwater to be a serious issue. When we ask about how much folks are willing to pay or what they think it's worth to resolve those, we get a different set of answers. MSD, the rate proposal I have in front of the Rate Commission and how we plan to proceed, this is a decision by the voters as to whether or not they want us to provide this service. And now MSD does view it, the reason everybody's voting, it's not just a service for the individual that's immediately impacted by the problem, but you can imagine we want to make sure MSD tries to provide a good drainage system throughout its entire service area. So whether or not, however you decide to vote is your call. MSD will make sure between January and March that we try to be as clear as we possibly can so everybody understands the consequences of either voting yes or no in April 2019, and MSD will abide by the results of that vote.
Follow-up question, Mr. Holscher, actually, Mr. Chairman. I think I have an issue. Can you come out and check on it? And do I get a bill if you come out and check my property for a flooding issue?
So anybody who calls us and asks to review a flooding issue, those services are already paid for in the 2-cent property tax that I described earlier. That's a regulatory function as a stormwater manager that MSD has. So if you have a problem, we will go out for free and we will evaluate your issue. 2 things can happen. 1, we will make sure we log it in the system. And what does happen in some instances, oftentimes there's very easy fixes to some of the problems. And our engineer will work with the property owner and see if the property owner can't possibly, with very little effort and expense, possibly resolve some of the problems they have themselves.
Next question, if you don't provide this service, who would in the future?
Understanding that Chairman Haw has indicated he works for the city of Kirkwood, and I just want to throw that out there, and Mr. Palins represents the city of Ladue. MSD firmly believes we're the ones to provide the service. We were set up by charter to be a regional authority to provide this service, and stormwater services don't abide or don't follow municipal boundaries. They follow watersheds, and those do not line up with the municipal boundaries. If MSD doesn't provide their service, there is some capability municipalities to try and address this issue as they can within their individual municipalities. MSD is continuously pressing the state government to try and provide funding to address these issues. Those are some possibilities, but I will tell you, if you're looking for a regional cost-effective way to address these issues, MSD is the right group in order to provide those services.
A question from Facebook this time. How will you let everyone know the outcome of the proposal, the rate commission decision, and what's provided to the Board of Trustees?
Okay. As was mentioned earlier, on our website is the entire proceedings for the rate commission. Their final report that's due on August 10th will be on that website, on the rate commission's website, as well as MSD's website for the 2018 stormwater rate proposal. You will see that proposal. The Board of Trustees will then, in their own way, go through a public process to determine whether or not they want to accept those recommendations or make changes. Again, those are also public processes. You will find the discussion in our committee meeting agendas. You will find it in our board agendas as to how we move forward. If you missed all that, in the end, and I'll repeat again, January through March 2019, if we proceed, MSD itself will have a series of meetings to make sure everybody understands the issues. As a matter of fact, if there's individual groups now or later who would like an explanation of this, please contact us. MSD will put a group together and we'll meet with any neighborhood group or any business group that would like to hear this presentation and ask their own questions. We want people to be as educated as they possibly can about the issue.
And Brian and Mr. Chairman, I will say that this is the largest number of questions that we have had at any of our meetings so far. So I want to thank everybody for engaging on social media. That's all the questions that I have at this time from the public, sir.
All right. Any further from the rate commissioners? Seeing none, again, I'd like to thank everybody for participating this afternoon, including the public. The next public hearing will be conducted on June 6, 2018 at 6 p.m. at the Forest Park Visitors Center. And with that, this public hearing is now adjourned.